Back in 2018, a Friday night in downtown Denver, Thomas Bush stole a John Deere tractor from the Denver water plant. And he led police on perhaps what was one of the strangest slow speed chases in history. For 30 minutes, he crawled the streets of downtown in a tractor. He was ramming buildings, hitting cars, driving on sidewalks, going down all sorts of busy roads. The whole city stopped to watch. The police cars trailed behind. Helicopters circled overhead. Eyewitnesses pulled out their phone and filmed everything. Social media exploded with viral comments and videos about this guy who was running from the police in a tractor. But here's what Thomas Bush was really doing. He was running from authority. He was trying to get away from authority in perhaps the only vehicle he could find available to him. He's a man that had a history of assault, of theft, of violence. He battles mental illness and addiction. He created chaos. He demanded attention. He was an absolute spectacle. Finally, a police car had no choice but had to ram into him to get the tractor to finally stop. And even then, after being tased, he fought the arrest. He injured officers, and he caused thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. One man stole a tractor and got an entire city's attention because he was fleeing from authority. Get that in your brain. But today, in our passage, we're going to see a man 2,000 years ago, the true King of glory, who had all authority, wasn't running from authority, but had all authority, enter into a city, and almost no one noticed once he got in the city. I've entitled my message, How Will You Receive Your King? The difference between welcoming him and truly receiving him. I want to define that. How will you receive Christ? If you have your Bibles, open up with me to the Gospel of Mark, Mark chapter 11. We're going to look at verses 1 through 11 of this so-called triumphal entry. You'll see why I say so-called in a moment. But I want to ask you a question that I think will frame everything that you're going to see in this passage. Here's my question. If Jesus came through your life today, would he pass by unnoticed? Listen to how Mark begins this account in just verse 1 through 6. Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem, to Bethphage and Bethany at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' say, 'The Lord has need of it, and will send it back here immediately.' And when they went away and found a colt tied at a door outside in the street, and they untied it. And some of those standing there said to them, 'What are you doing untying the colt?' And otherwise, 'You're stealing our car, our tractor, our colt.' And they told them what Jesus had said, and they let them go." I'm going to call these first six verses the King's deliberate entrance. I want you to take note of something broad stroke here. This isn't spontaneous. Every detail is orchestrated. Jesus knows exactly where the colt will be. He tells the disciples exactly where they can find it. He knows every question they're going to ask before they ask it, so he peacefully provides an answer. And here the King of the universe is coordinating his coronation. The disciples return, Mark tells us, and it says, they found everything exactly as he had told them. Every word that Jesus spoke was spoken perfectly. This sovereign authority of Christ worked even over the ride that was waiting for him. But here's the beautiful irony. Jesus chose to enter Jerusalem not on a war horse. He didn't say, go into Bethpage and find this beautiful white horse with no blemish that the Romans will be scared of. No, he says, find the colt of a donkey, a young donkey that has never been ridden. What? In this, he's fulfilling Zechariah 9:9. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey. The king comes, but he comes humbly. He comes with salvation, not demanding tribute. Look how the passage continues in verse 7. And they brought the colt to Jesus, and they threw their cloak on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their cloak on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest. Notice the crowd's excitement. Some are laying down their cloaks, their coats, as a sign of honor. Some are waving palm branches. Others are shouting, Hosanna, which means, save us now, O Lord. Some are quoting Psalm 118, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. But notice what they added. I get, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That's Psalm 118. But verse 10, they added, blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. They wanted there to be some kind of political restoration through Christ, not spiritual transformation. The kingdom of David, the coming kingdom. They're looking for military deliverance, not a suffering servant. They have the right words, but I think they have the wrong heart. They wanted Jesus to be king on their terms, not on his. I want you to think about this in our own life for a moment. How easy is it for us to welcome Jesus when we think he's going to give us what we want? He's going to give us a better life. He's going to give us financial blessing. He's going to give us political victory or national revival. But what happens when Jesus wants something more of our lives? What happens when this king says, I want your schedule? I want your money. I want your relationships. I want your priorities. I think we resist. Or at best, we passively grow silent. That's what leads us to verse 11, the devastating silence. After all the crowd's response, which I call the right words and the wrong heart, in verse 7 through 10, I then see the devastating silence in verse 11. Here's where Mark delivers perhaps the most sobering verse of this entire passage. It says, and he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple, and when he looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Now, it'd be easy for us to read that. There's just a narrative line of transition, but I want you to let it sink in for a moment. All the noise outside the city, on the road down to Jerusalem, probably a road I will walk just next week. This road that enters from Bethany into Jerusalem, there's a guy that is on that road. Every time I've been on it, he's pulling a donkey behind him, and he's just saying, Jesus taxi, Jesus taxi, Jesus taxi. You can pay him to ride the donkey into Jerusalem. That road was full of hubbub, but he gets into the city and all the noise is gone. All the hosannas are over. The palm branches have been put away. There's no royal treatment. Jesus enters the temple and there's nothing. There's silence. Perhaps it's more profound in the Greek. The Greek word here for looked around literally means to survey comprehensively. He looks around. And nothing. Jesus didn't just glance, he surveyed comprehensively, he examined. Maybe he was looking for the reception as king, but it wasn't there. In the temple, the very place that should have been prepared for him, the place where God's presence was supposed to dwell, he found silence. Nothing. I wrote it down this way. The King of Glory surveyed his temple and finds no room made for him. I think it's an echo of his birth account. There was no room in the inn. There was no room in the temple. There was no one there excited to see him. The excitement on the streets was gone, but the religious life of the temple was silence. The crowd made a noise, but the temple had no response. The people shouted, but the leaders who should have known the truth, they were indifferent. And so Mark gives us this heartbreaking, simple phrase, and he went out. He left. Now, before we get too discouraged, let me tell you about a man named Marcus. Marcus has been a part of our congregation for years. He worshiped here faithfully every Sunday. He was a faithful member of our men's group, the Men of Valor. He raised 3 boys with his wife, Tracy. He served in ministry all through his marriage. His wife served in over 2 decades of ministry. Marcus knew who his king was. He had already received his king. And in 2019, Marcus was diagnosed with cancer. And he was told he only had 18 months to live. But you know what Marcus did? He kept on persevering. He kept on living far past 18 months. Not just surviving, but I would say to you, living from the joy of his salvation. For over 5-6 years, he battled this disease, but seemingly his faith never wavered. I remember sitting over here right behind him one Sunday during worship. It was a Sunday I wasn't preaching. And I went behind him, and I was brought to tears as I watched Marcus raise his hands in all-out praise to our King, knowing that his body literally was fighting to stay alive. Last Sunday, he came to church and he sat right over here. He sat with his wife, Tracy, and he worshiped one last time with us. And on Friday night at 6:21 p.m., he entered into glory with Jesus Christ. This week, when I went to see Marcus, I kissed his forehead there in the hospital bed. And I said to him through tears welling up in my eyes and my stomach and my throat, Marcus, I'll see you on the other side. I'll see you in heaven. And you know what he did? He was utterly non-responsive most of the day, but he just gave me a firm nod, like, yes, I'll see you in heaven. That is what it looks like to receive Jesus as your King. It's not necessarily loud, it's not dramatic, it's not some kind of temporary enthusiasm. It's just steady, faithful, confident surrender to Christ that says, you are my King, you are worthy, I trust you with my life and I trust you in my death. Marcus's life actually was the opposite of that silent temple. Where the temple offered Jesus nothing, Marcus offered everything. Where religious leaders saw threats, Marcus saw a Savior. Where the crowds gave temporary excitement, Marcus gave lifelong faithfulness. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. If Jesus came through your life, would he pass through unnoticed? If he showed up in the midst of your workday, in the midst of your family life, in the midst of your routines, would he pass through unnoticed? Would he find a heart that's prepared for him? Or would he look at your priorities and go, well, there's no room for me here? Would he discover genuine worship? Or would he say, wow, this person's just religious. They have religious activities, but it's void. Would he see someone who's truly surrendered? Or would he just see someone who has Sunday morning enthusiasm and moves on? The tragedy of the Palm Sunday story isn't that Jesus was rejected. That comes later. The tragedy is that Jesus was ignored. He was treated as nothing more than a man of curiosity, perhaps a a momentary excitement, a means to an end, but not as the king that he actually is. My friends, the proper reception of the king is not a one-time emotional response, but it's a lifelong worship, a lifelong faith, a lifelong surrender. So back to the man on the tractor. The man on the tractor got everyone's attention because he was running from authority. But Jesus deserves our attention because he has all authority. Though he's quiet and humble, he has perfect authority. And he comes not to destroy, no, but to save. So when Jesus walks through the city of your heart, will you lay down not just your coat, but your will? God, have your way in my life. When Jesus walks into your life, will you give him more than Hosanna, lip service? Will you give him your life? Will your Monday look different? Because today you remembered and renewed your commitment that Jesus Christ is your King. My friends, true discipleship is marked by a response to Jesus as King. It's not momentary enthusiasm. It's not shallow admiration. It is enduring faith. It is enduring worship. It is enduring surrender. The crowd welcomed Jesus with noise. The temple received him with silence. By God's grace, the 12 seemingly followed him faithfully on to Bethany after this, just like Marcus did in our congregation. Followed him along the way and received him as king. So the question isn't whether or not Jesus is king. He is king. The question is, will you be unlike Jerusalem? Will you receive him as king? I hope when you do, you will say just the one line from Psalm 118. They should have stopped there. Say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Will you repeat that line with me? Ready? Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. May your life say it. Not just your lips, but your life. Your heart, the choices you make, the trust you have. May your life declare, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.